engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. I'm looking at a meaningless world. I'm looking at a meaningless world. I'm looking at a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear, because I think I'm in competition with God. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. I'm looking at a meaningless world. I'm looking at a meaningless world. I'm looking at a meaningless world. A meaningless world engenders fear, because I think I'm in competition with God. A meaningless world engenders fear. Meaningless world engenders fear. Well, let's take a look at Lesson 13 in A Course in Miracles. We're reading from the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles today on, well, it's actually Friday for me, but it'll be Monday, January the 13th of 2025 for Lesson 13. I'm Forgiveness Willie, teaching forgiveness from the snowy Ozarks of southwest Missouri, near Neosho, Missouri, the land of many waters in the Osage tongue. Osage, Neosho, land of many waters. A meaningless world engenders fear. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one. And remember what the preceding one was? I am upset because I see a meaningless world. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. It arouses fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible because God didn't create anything that didn't have any meaning. But that doesn't mean that we understand that at this point in our maze of complexity that we've believed and thought. And actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not think you perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. You know, one of the things that I kind of noticed that was a big change in my life when I started getting more integrated with realizing that I wasn't separate from God, is that I really didn't care anymore whether I understood what things meant. Where before I had to have some meaning on everything that I saw. Otherwise, I wouldn't, well, he's going to explain why I had that feeling. But let's go ahead and read it. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. However, let's just read the first paragraph again. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not think you perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be particularly likely to think you do perceive it. And because you think there's no meaning, you'll want to put a meaning on it so that you, well, he's going to explain why in just a minute. Okay, this is under 13. A meaningless world engenders fear. Paragraph 2. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. It represents a situation in which God and the ego, in quotes, challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space that meaninglessness provides. So meaninglessness actually provides an empty space for either God's word to be written or for the ego's ideas to be imprinted. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas there, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own impotence and unreality. And on this alone is it correct. Paragraph 3. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaninglessness. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. Recognize what you don't have meaning for and accept it without fear, knowing that in reality there's good meaning on it. You just don't understand it at this point. And that's okay, because you'll be shown exactly what to do in every moment with the voice of peace that we're learning to listen to. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. If you're fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes that it does not possess, and crowd it with images that do not exist. Again, on that sentence, if you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes that it does not possess, and crowd it with images that do not exist. To the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. Again, on that last sentence, to the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. Paragraph 4. The exercises for today, which should be done about 3 or 4 times for not more than a minute or so at most each time, are to be practiced in a somewhat different way from the preceding ones. With eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself. A meaningless world engenders fear. Say that with your eyes closed. Then open your eyes and look about you slowly, saying, I'm looking at a meaningless world. And just look around you slowly. So you start off with your eyes closed and say, a meaningless world engenders fear. Then you'll open your eyes and look around and tell yourself, I'm looking at a meaningless world. Repeat this statement to yourself as you look about for about a minute, and then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. A meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another to this concluding statement. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you're really afraid of such a thought because of the, in quotes, vengeance of the, in quotes, enemy. Okay, because you're thinking that maybe the enemy, in this case it'd be God from the ego's perspective, wanting to fill in the empty space, is a vindictive God that's going to punish you for not doing what he wants. Anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of what he's really trying to get us to understand. At this point, he's just trying to say that whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. You are not expected to believe the statement at this point, and will probably dismiss it as preposterous. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear, inner fear or outer fear, real obvious or kind of cloaked in the darkness fear. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear that it may arouse. The last paragraph. This is our first attempt at stating an explicit cause and effect relationship of a kind which you are very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement, and try not even to think of it except during the practice periods. That will suffice at present. So he doesn't really want us to hang out on the idea that I'm in competition with God, except on that concluding statement 3 or 4 times today. And he said don't even try to get it, because he doesn't really, it's really not true And he doesn't want you to think it's true because it's an illusion is the point he's trying to make. But he's trying to get you you've got to recognize the illusion you're believing before you can let it go. You can't dismiss something that you haven't recognized. So he takes us into a little bit of fear just so that we can realize that we've been thinking incorrectly. So we can straighten out our minds and have the atonement, the right-mindedness, which we're going to learn about. Healing as release from fear in our text reading today. Chapter 2, the separation and the atonement. Section Roman numeral 4, healing as release from fear. Our emphasis is now on healing. The miracle is the means, the atonement is the principle, and healing is the result. Okay, the miracle is the means, the atonement is the principle, and healing is the result. And the word atonement is capitalized, speaking of divinity, the Holy Spirit. To speak of a miracle of healing is to combine two orders of reality inappropriately. Healing is not a miracle. The atonement, or the final miracle, is a remedy, and any type of healing is a result. And what you might think of is, instead of use the word miracle there, let's use the word forgiveness, because it's really the same thing. Because forgiveness is what sets the stage for the miracle to come forth. So the atonement, or the final forgiveness, when you finally have forgiven everybody for everything all the time, okay, that's the atonement, the at-one-ment. The atonement, or the final miracle or forgiveness, is a remedy, and any type of healing is a result. Okay, so forgiveness, the completed chain of forgiveness, is the greatest miracle, or the greatest healing. It's atonement. So again on that sentence, exactly as healing is not a miracle, the atonement, or the final miracle, is a remedy, and any type of healing is a result. The kind of error to which atonement is applied is irrelevant. All healing is essentially the release from fear. To undertake this, you cannot be fearful yourself. You do not understand healing because of your own fear. Okay, so now when you're seeing the obvious need for a healing in yourself or someone else, recognize that there's some fear hanging out in you. You still haven't reached that place where you can let go of the fear. You'll heal automatically when the cause of it, which is a fear, an unforgiveness, or judgment, a miscreation, a misunderstanding of God, is removed from you. That's what the miracle does. A major step in the atonement plan is to undo error at all levels. Sickness, or another name for sickness, not right-mindedness. Isn't that something? Sickness, or not right-mindedness, is the result of level confusion, because it always entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. We have referred to miracles as the means of correcting level confusion, for all mistakes must be corrected at the level on which they occur. Only the mind is capable of error. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. Remember, it's thought that moves the body. The body doesn't have any initial power to move itself. Only the mind is capable of error. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. The body cannot create, and the belief that it can, a fundamental error, produces all physical symptoms. Physical illness represents a belief in magic. The whole distortion that made magic rests on the belief that there is a creative ability in matter which the mind cannot control. This error can take two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body, or that the body can miscreate in the mind. Okay, again on that. The error can take two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body, or that the body can miscreate in the mind. When it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create by itself, neither type of confusion need occur. Paragraph 3. Only the mind can create because spirit has already been created, and the body is a learning device for the mind. Learning devices are not lessons in themselves. Their purpose is merely to facilitate learning. So only the mind can create because spirit has already been created, and the body is a learning device for the mind. The body is a learning device for the mind. Learning devices are not lessons in themselves. Their purpose is merely to facilitate learning. The worst a faulty use of a learning device can do is to fail to facilitate learning. It has no power in itself to introduce actual learning errors. The body, if properly understood, shares the invulnerability of the atonement to two-edged application. This is not because the body is a miracle, but because it is not inherently open to misinterpretation. The body is merely part of your experience in the physical world. Its abilities can be, and frequently are, over-evaluated. However, it is almost impossible to deny its existence in this world. Those who do so are engaging in a particularly unworthy form of denial. The term unworthy here implies only that it is not necessary to protect the mind by denying the unmindful. Maybe we better read that again, that sentence. So, however, it is almost impossible to deny the body's existence in this world. Those who do so are engaging in a particularly unworthy form of denial. The term unworthy here implies only that it is not necessary to protect the mind by denying the unmindful. If one denies this unfortunate aspect of the mind's power, one is also denying the power itself. So the body is a result of the mind's need to learn something. It's a learning device, and we don't want to lessen the mind that made the body by denying the body. Okay, paragraph 4. In a sense, we do deny it. I mean, we recognize that we're not a body. But he'll balance it all out as we go along. All materials, paragraph 4, all material means that you accept as remedies for bodily ills are restatements of magic principles. This is the first step in believing that the body makes its own illness. It is a second misstep to attempt to heal it through non-creative agents. In other words, mindless things, like different potions and different medicines. But, he's already said that we might need a compromise approach in the beginning, a little bit of accepting some of those outside influences, magical potions. It is a second misstep to attempt to heal it through non-creative agents. It does not follow, however, that the use of such agents for corrective purposes is evil. Sometimes the illness has a sufficiently strong hold over the mind to render a person temporarily inaccessible to the atonement. In this case, it may be wise to utilize a compromise approach to mind and body, in which something from the outside is temporarily given healing belief. This is because the last thing that can help the non-right-minded or the sick is an increase in fear. So we don't want to increase fear in our brothers and sisters or ourselves. So we might need to use something from the outside to help us alleviate some of our fear. Maybe this medicine that this doctor gave me might help me. Well, that alleviates the fear a little bit. And so he says that's okay. But he said that's still a belief in magic. It's not using the mind's inerrant quality Um, anyway, this is because the last thing that can help the non-right-minded or the sick, there he uses it again, the non-right-minded or the sick, is an increase in fear. They are already in a fear-weakened state. If they are prematurely exposed to a miracle, they may be precipitated into panic. This is likely to occur when upside-down perception has induced the belief that miracles are frightening. And the last paragraph, 5. The value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. The value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. In fact, if it is used truly, it will inevitably be expressed in whatever way is most helpful to the receiver. This means that a miracle, to attain its full efficacy, must be expressed in a language that the recipient can understand without fear. This does not necessarily mean that this is the highest level of communication of which he is capable. It does mean, however, that it is the highest level of communication of which he is capable now. The whole aim of the miracle is to raise the level of communication, not to lower it by increasing fear. Okay, that looks good. That's a good stopping place, I think. That's the end of the text. Let's see what's going on around the world before we close, and we'll do that meditation together on our closing song. Let's see. A meaningless world engenders fear. Okay, let's see. It's Maghi Day. Maghi. Maghi, is that correct way to pronounce it? It's a Sikhs celebration, and it refers to the 40 liberated ones. There were 40 students of the Guru in 1704 in Muxtar of the Punjab and India that were willing to lay down their lives and did so to protect their Guru. So it's the Maghi Day of the Sikhs. It's also Korean American Day. So, North and South Korea speak Korean, and their word for peace, let's use it for today. And I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I did listen to them, and I think I've got it down right. Pyeonghwa. So, Pyeonghwa, be with you. Peace be with you. Pyeonghwa. With our brothers and sisters, our Korean brothers and sisters. Okay, Plow Day in England, the first Monday after Epiphany, which was on the 6th this year, and it's the beginning of the English agricultural year. I guess you old farmers here in antiquity have been getting out and plowing the day after Epiphany. Start their agricultural year. Of course, we want to start learning more and more about how to do no-till plowing, so the micro bacteria and funguses, the mycelium, can all get growing in the soil and not be disturbed by ripping it apart. There are times where plowing is useful, but generally back to Eden type gardening and farming where we don't till the soil would be the better choice. There's some times where you have to, like growing potatoes. There's almost a need. You can do it without it, but let's go on though. CALENNIG, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's a Welsh holiday, and it's the New Year's gift giving. So I guess a few days after New Year, they'd give gifts to each other. Anyway, it's called CALENNIG, the Welsh holiday. And then in edible landscaping, we've got the Overlesse Pawpaw. It'd be the last pawpaw that we'll be reading about. Then we're going to go on to some other things. I think the next one we'll be looking into is a pomegranate. But, pomegranates. But the Overlesse Pawpaw, which is Asamina triloba, the Overlesse Pawpaw won Best Fruit at the Ohio Pawpaw Festival in 2011. Large, oval, round, and few seeds with excellent flavor. Overlesse is a parent of many other improved cultivars including Peterson's Shenandoah Pawpaw. Okay, well, let's close with our song and our little 1-minute meditation. So I'll take a little bit of time while we're in the middle of this song to pause, and we'll, or I won't pause. I'll say, I'll just repeat, I'm looking at a meaningless world for about a minute. Okay, close to it anyway. A meaningless world engenders fear. 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 I'm looking at a meaningless world. We're supposed to close our eyes on that first part. Let's do it again. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. And look around and say, I'm looking at a meaningless world. 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 A meaningless world engenders fear, because I think I'm in competition with God. Okay. Well, thank you all again for joining me on this snowy day for Lesson 13. And our word for peace is with our Korean brothers and sisters. Pyeonghwa. Pyeonghwa be with you. A meaningless world engenders fear. Pyeonghwa.